I'm Troy Kirby with MLT News with a quick look at the 2021 Washington State Legislative Session. House lawmakers debated Engrossed Substitute Senate Bill 5092, the state operating budget, which includes a capital gains tax. The bill passed the Senate 2722 on April 1st and passed the House April 3rd by a vote of 57-41. The House and Senate will negotiate amendments, and if they come to terms, the legislation will go on to the governor's office for the possibility to be signed into law.
This turning point is because of the sacrifices the people of our state have made over the past year. The loss of jobs, wages, time away from loved ones, businesses that have closed, and neighbors who have moved away unexpectedly. And of course, the lives that were lost due to the pandemic. The pandemic has impacted every person in every corner of our state. And a year ago, we had no idea the severity of the economic and health impacts due to the pandemic. But the budget team braced for the worst. And many of us remember the devastating cuts from the last recession. But our call to action was to do things differently and to use the budget to dismantle centuries of systemic racism.
This unsustainable growth rate and taking all of our money out of our savings account are not acceptable. And we've raced down that path so quickly without considering that cause and effect. And I'd like, the good paraphrase of the great mathematician, Dr. Ian Malcolm, he said, we were so preoccupied with that we could do it, we never stopped and asked if we should do it. And it's for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I'm asking for a no vote today. I again recognize the hard work that's gone into this, and there are a lot of good things in this budget. But this unsustainable growth rate is going to come back to haunt us.
This Washington recovery budget puts people first by standing up for communities hardest hit by the pandemic, including our rural communities, our communities of color, and immigrant communities. Our budget boosts funding for public health districts so they can keep us healthy, and it invests more than $1 billion in vaccines, tracing, and testing to beat this pandemic.
This budget is funded by a tax that I believe to be unpopular and unconstitutional. That could be thrown out by voters or the courts at any point, which would create a significant hole in the budget and make us unable to fund the many good things that have been described on the floor. I believe that the tax that it relies upon is highly volatile, and even if it isn't thrown out in its entirety by courts or voters, there will be years in which we don't recognize nearly as much revenue as we assume, which will cause us again to make difficult cuts to many of these important programs like the Working Families Tax Exemption. I'm also concerned, Mr. Speaker, that this relies on a tax that will hamper our recovery efforts. We heard from many members on both sides of the aisle how important it is for this budget to help get Washington State back to work and recovered, but I'm deeply concerned that taxing innovators and entrepreneurs will hamper that very recovery. And most importantly, Mr. Speaker, as we've pointed out time and time again, this new tax is simply not necessary. We can fund every last dime that is funded in the underlying budget without assuming this tax.
Thank you for watching the Daily Legislative Report by MLT News, covering the 2021 legislative session.